Hello YouTube. A couple of weeks ago I was here on YouTube doing a search for videos on witchcraft and the occult, and I came across a video talking about the author Randall Burr. Now for those of you who do not remember Randall Burr, he wrote a series of books back in the early 80s about crystals. One of the books he wrote was a book called Windows of Light, and this is a book that I have here. This is a really good book for those of you who want to study quartz crystals. It talks about the different properties in crystals, how they were used in ancient times, how to cleanse crystals. It's an excellent book. He also wrote another influential book back in the early 80s called The Crystal Connection. Another great book on quartz crystals. Now, I've always been a fan of Randall Burr, and when I heard that he converted to Christianity, I was a bit saddened. But, to each his own. If the path you're on is not the path for you, then you switch paths. So Randall Burr, he switched from being a part of the New Age movement. I guess that's still around now, right? Anyway, he switched from using crystals and doing things along that nature. He switched from that to being a Christian, which I don't have a problem with. What I do have a problem with is a lot of times when you see people who are involved in the occult, either if it's New Age or if it's paganism or witchcraft or ceremonial magic or whatever. What happens a lot of times is when they convert to Christianity, they'll talk about their former religious beliefs as something that was not truly spiritual. And the reason why they see it as not truly spiritual is because what usually happens is they have some type of bad experience, with spirits or with people or whatever, and they'll say, these spirits that I was in contact with, they're really evil or whatever. And that's what happened in Randall's case. Now the thing is that those of us who work with spirits on a daily basis know that this is not true. What happens a lot of times is people who are not truly practitioners of the occult, or who are not truly ready to deal with the spirits, when they come across one that's not so friendly or when they come across something that freaks them out, or on some level, they'll go running back to Christianity, saying that all of these spirits that I was in contact with are somehow evil or somehow demonic, or they're not out for my greater good, or they're in league with the devil or whatever. And for those of us who work with spirits throughout our lives, we go back and we'll look at these testimonies and we're like, this guy really didn't have a firm foundation in what he was doing from the get-go. Now he might have, now in Randall's case, yeah, he knew his stuff about crystals. I will still go back and I would read his books on crystals. They're excellent books, by the way. But as far as communicating with spirits, or dealing with spirits, if you have one bad experience, that should not take away from all the other experiences you've had with beings from other dimensions or whatever. And to me, it's just, I'm always floored by these testimonies that I hear when people have some type of negative experience with a spirit. It's sort of like, say if I go out to a party and I meet a lot of people that I like, or whatever, and I meet someone who's just a complete asshole. Now I don't go and say, well, I'm never going to go to a party because there might be an asshole, at a party or whatever, or there might be someone who I dislike or whatever. That is just not the case. That person was an asshole, or that person was a jerk or whatever. And the same is true of the spirit realm. If you come across a spirit that is not friendly towards you, then you just move on. Um, there are some spirits out there that are not necessarily friendly to humans. Some of them don't want to be bothered. Some of them are helpful. Some of them are not so helpful. From my experience, a lot of the spirits that people come across, they're pretty neutral. They're not good or evil. They're neutral beings. And a lot of times when people, especially white lighters, when they come across these beings and they come across a nasty one, the first thing they'll do is they'll go running back to their former religion and they will say, hey, all these forces that I was in touch with, all these beings that I was in touch with, they really weren't angels of light or whatever. That they were in somehow these dark demonic forces or whatever. Now, the way I look at this is like this. When you look at history, especially the history of philosophy, one of the greatest philosophers of all time, his name was Socrates. He's one of the founding fathers of Greek philosophy. Socrates had a daemon, and that daemon, not pronounced demon, but daemon, basically told him, it sort of, how the best way for me to put this, it counseled him throughout his life. It told him if he was about to say something that he would regret later, this daemon would basically say, hey, you might want to choose your words more carefully. Or if he was in a situation where the outcome would not be a pleasant one, this daemon would basically whisper in his ear, hey, you might want to get out of the situation, you might want to do this instead of that or whatever. And this daemon followed him throughout his life. Now, those of you who study philosophy would know that Socrates was also the teacher of Plato, and Plato was the teacher of Aristotle, and so on. Now, if this guy was truly in touch with something evil, then why wasn't Socrates considered evil? In ancient times, Socrates, even my philosophy teacher told me that other than Jesus, Socrates was one of the most moral men to walk the face of the earth back then in that time. And he was in touch with this daemon throughout his life. It's just, when I hear stories about these ex-Christians and they go back and they badmouth their former religions, I truly think that they did not have a grasp on what they were studying and what they were practicing. A lot of times when I hear these stories, it comes from younger people too. They'll tell a story about how they were kids and they got a Ouija board and they went out to a graveyard and they just tried to contact spirits and whatnot, and they had some type of bad experience. Well, got a message for you. If you have a bad experience with a spirit and you don't know how to handle it, it might be because you weren't ready to deal with the spirits on that level. People who deal with the spirits and people who are truly in touch with what people call the supernatural are people who have found a firm foundation on what to do if they get in touch with something that is not so pleasant when it manifests themselves. A good book to get on psychic self-defense is a book written by Diane Fortune, and it's called Psychic Self-Defense. Now, I would recommend that to anyone who wants to work with the spirits and who wants to communicate and commune with them. So, Till next